So my job was I flew helicopters for the Navy. Part of our mission was search and rescue, logistics support. We took passengers, mail, and cargo from the beach to the ships. We would go out on the ships and, like I said, provide search and rescue support when the jets and other aircraft were flying in, on and off the jet aircraft carriers. We kind of a round, just a general mission. Anytime anything needed to be transported by helicopters, we could. We could do medical evacuations, you know, like Life Flight does around here. We could do fire bucket detail, so if we had a grass fire or some kind of a wildfire, we could provide firefighting services as well. So a lot of different things. We did external loads. If you had a heavy item that needed to be lifted from one place to another, or stores of food supply or some kind of resupply material for the ships or another aircraft or another station, we could do that too. So we did a little bit of everything.
Did you consider it your career, or was it just a job for you?
Well, when I first went in, it was just a job. I wanted to fly. I knew I wanted to fly since I was probably about 7 years old, when my dad took my mother and I up in a little small civilian aircraft. And I thought that was just the bomb, and so I was like, this is what I want to do. So that's where that's what I strived for when I went through college and everything. So at first it was a job, and then it turned into a career. So I never left because I was still having fun. So I kind of had the idea that when it stopped being fun, then that was probably time to get out. So
okay.
Every day wasn't fun, but overall it was enjoyable. I look forward to going to work and worked with great people and loved the mission because I felt like it was something greater than just myself. I was giving back to the country, serving my country. I was proud to do that, and I thought it was really something, so that's why I stayed in.
And you said you did it for 21 years, is that right?
21 years, yep. I pretty much exhausted everything that I could do. I wasn't flying anymore, and it was more of a desk job. I had 3 children, and I felt they needed me, so that was a good time to get out, and that was when I could effectively retire and have a retirement. So
when did you stop flying?
So with the Navy, and I think with most other military agencies, that you go in, if you're going to be a pilot, you fly for a while, and then they groom you to do other jobs to hopefully give you a commanding position in either a squadron or an air station or something like that. Not everybody can get there. And I got to a certain point, I did not get the command of a squadron or whatever. So at that point, I pretty much there were no more flying jobs for me. I was getting too senior in my rank, and so that's why I ended up being more of a job, desk job and type thing. So it was interesting, and obviously had some insight of what the fleet did and some influence, but after a while, it's like, okay, it's time to move on and do something else.
Kind of off topic of the question, did you know when you joined the military you were going in there to try to fly?
Oh, yes. Yes, that's what, when I went to college, I ended up going through the Reserve Officer Training Corps program, or ROTC. And I know some schools here, high schools, have junior ROTC. In college, they have ROTC, where you, in some cases, can get scholarships to go to school there, or just get some money to support your school time there. You go, you learn about some military history and all that. It's either a 2 or a 4-year program. And then at the end of that, you graduate and you are in the military, usually as an officer, because you finished a college degree and you go in as an officer. Before you complete your degree and get your commission, as they call it, as an officer, you are selected for a specialty, and that's, you buy or compete for that with the Navy. And I don't know of all the Army and the Air Force, but I think it's very similar. With the Navy, you have your surface warfare, people who drive the ships, you have your aviators, and you have your submariners, you drive the submarines. And so those require certain, test scores, IQ, ambitions, and stuff like that. But I knew I wanted to go aviation. Like I said, I knew from when I was 7 years old that I wanted to fly, and I wanted to fly in the military.
What did you enjoy most about your job as a pilot and later commander?
Just being up in the air and doing stuff. It was just, every day was different. The mission was challenging. The mission was fun. We'd get up, fly. It was empowering. It was fun, challenging. It was everything, and it was almost like a good workout in the gym. You go there and you get into it and you come back and you're like, wow, that was fun. And that's the way I always felt after a flight.
Mm-hmm. What sort of things were you doing as you were flying those missions or practice flights, whatever you were?
Yeah. So usually sometimes you have a mission where you have to go out and transport something from one place to another, or you just go train. You're constantly training, you're constantly learning, you're constantly practicing. So with like search and rescue, that doesn't happen all the time, thank goodness, because that usually means somebody's in distress. But we practice often, so if we do get called out on a search and rescue mission, we do it well and we are successful. So as in a helicopter, and now jets have a single seat, so the pilot does a lot more on their own, but in a helicopter you have two pilots and you share the duties. One will be flying and the other will handle navigation and radios and communications. And then we also have an air crewman who's an enlisted. A lot of times right out of high school they go and they learn, they go to air crew school, they learn about aircraft, they learn how to be an air crewman because they operate in the back of the helicopter. Helicopter has that space back there and that's their domain. They're in charge of that, organizing it, maintaining, if you have passengers, maintaining their safety. And also, too, it's another set of eyes and another person who's knowledgeable in the aircraft. And together we work as a team, and because each mission will require that team effort. In a search and rescue, you can have one person flying, the other person, again, communicating and all that. And the air crewman in the back is the one facilitating the rescue. They're the ones running the hoist. And we'll have a second crewman there who's a swimmer. And if anybody's seen the movie Guardian, then they'll jump into the water and they'll go after the survivor and help them and connect them to the hoist to bring them up into the helicopter.
If you can talk about it, is there a mission you remember, like specifically that was, a challenge?
Oh gosh, when I was in, there was a law called combat exclusion that didn't allow women to fly combat aircraft or in combat zones or be assigned to combat ships. So there was I didn't have as exciting missions as a lot of the women do now, because in 1993 that was lifted, so now women can fly anything, anywhere, on anything, on any ship, be assigned to any ship. So there's a lot more excitement. I think probably the challenging thing was when I was in Bahrain, just flying out. We would fly all over the Arabian Gulf, delivering stuff to all these different ships. So the challenge was navigating, because they didn't have our navigational aids that we're used to in the United States. So you just kind of had to know where the ships were, use the compass, and fly out there, and you'd be landing on every ship, which was fun because the decks are different sizes, and usually we would land on a deck that's about the size of this room. And I was flying a big helicopter, so sometimes we didn't have a lot of space between the hangar and the helicopter blades, but that was always challenging because big helicopter, little stamp.
How you touched on it a little bit before, but how did you decide on this career path?
Okay, so I will touch. So like I said, when I was about 7 years old, my dad was in the Air Force, so I grew up in the military family. He learned to fly civilian, and when he got his private license, he took my mother and I up and was doing some maneuvers. One of them was called steep turn, and so he was turning real steep. And has anybody heard and know what G-forces are? Okay, so that's the gravitational pull against your body, and when you do a turn or you have some speed, you can feel it in your car. It's almost like centrifugal force on the ground when you're turning. If you're turning a corner, your parents are turning a corner real fast, how it kind of pulls you to one side of the car or the other. That's essentially like a G-force acting upon your body. Well, in an aircraft, that will make a heavier force, force you against the seat, and it'll make your head heavy and all that, which I thought was fun. My mother was freaking out. I thought it was great, and right then and there I said, I want to fly in the military. The big thing is that was in the late 60s, and women weren't in military, flying in the military yet, but nobody told me that. So I kept on with that dream. In high school, tried to take science and math. I wasn't the greatest at it, but good enough, obviously. And then went into college. I did a science degree and joined the ROTC program so I could compete. That's one way to get into the military. Another way is through a Naval Academy or military academies or officer candidate school, which you would go to after college. So that's how I got into it, and that's how I knew I always wanted it. Yeah.
What was your most dangerous mission?
I don't know that I had a real danger. I would say just flying around Bahrain.
We have a whole question and answer session.
Okay, hold on. I'll try and think of something. And nothing really stands out, but anyway.
What skills or education are important for success in that field or to enter the field of aviation? And we'll ask the second part of the question in a minute.
Okay, skills. I would say you don't have to be a mathematician, but you need to have a good grasp of math, basic algebra, trigonometry, understanding of angles and time and distance calculations, a lot of stuff. Like I said, it's not calculus and all that, although that does help you in your reasoning. Math is good because it really teaches your brain and teaches you how to think through problems and reason. And that's something you need to be able to do. If you're flying and you have an emergency, you need to be able to get an idea, evaluate the emergency, and then through the procedures that you've memorized, be able to go step by step to continue flying, be able to get back home and keep the aircraft in the air and get everybody safely home. Math, sciences do help. If you can understand the way a basic engine works, aerodynamics of an airplane or a helicopter, that helps. It's for those of you who drive or will be driving, the more you know about your car and the way it operates, it just makes it easier to figure out what's going wrong or avoid any issue. And that's the same thing in an airplane when I kind of know that. It's being in the military and just even aviation, basic all around communication skills, obviously reading and comprehending, because you've got a lot of books, probably about 2 times that stack right there, that tell you how to fly the aircraft, where you can fly it, missions, procedures, and you need to know all of that. And if any of you have looked in a helicopter or an aircraft, there's a lot of switches and a lot of circuit breakers, and you need to know all of them and what they do, how they connect to each other. If one goes bad, what does it do to the other thing? So reading comprehension, that, and a good grasp of math and that. Now, to say that, you don't have to be a science major, math major, or whatever in college. If you've got the aptitude for it, that's good. Had a really good friend of mine, real sharp. She was a theater arts major, but she was great. She could do math and science and all that. So when you go to college, you can get a degree in what you want, but if you want to go in aviation and all that, I would say make sure, or even if you want to go to an academy, build your academic resume with science and math.
Where did you go to college?
Went to University of Utah.
Okay. We didn't mention this. Where are you from originally?
Well, I was a military family, so kind of all over. I was born in California. We lived in Germany, Texas, and then the last move we moved to Utah, and that's I call home. I grew up there I went through 4th grade all the way through the end of college, so that's where I spent the longest.
And what did you major in at Utah?
Geology.
Geology.
I like rocks.
The study of rocks.
My kids, my mom and dad would say, I'd see a rock and pick it up and look, and I just thought it was really cool, and so I did a degree that I really enjoyed because I knew I could do really well. It's easier to do well in a degree or a job when you really enjoy it.
Kind of what we talk about, guys, with careers. If you can find the thing that matches up with your personality, it makes it a lot easier. Makes it, you're going to enjoy going to work. You're going to enjoy going to school and learning about it if it's something you're really interested in. What was a challenge or obstacle that you had to overcome in your career?
Probably my own self-doubt. You know, I mean, challenge, one thing the military does, and it's really thing, and I've seen this with my daughter and my son, is they will challenge you to do things you didn't think about or think you could do or even think about doing. And so when, it's kind of daunting when you put before a challenge, like jumping off a high dive. I mean, I wasn't a swimmer, I could swim. That's one thing in the Navy, you need to be able to do is swim. But, you know, you're looking down and you have to dive down to simulate jumping off a ship if you had to evacuate a ship. So there's a lot of those things, it's challenging. Like I said, when I went through, there were very few of us women. So that was kind of intimidating in a way. Here we are coming into this arena, but, and some people were doubtful of my own progress, but I just never gave up. And so that was the thing that overcame any of my self-doubt was, okay, let me just do the best I can, work as hard as I can, and at least if I do fail, then I know I gave it the best shot I could, and it just wasn't.
What year did you enter the Navy?
1984.
Being that it was a different time, did you feel a lot of pressure as a woman being in that role, or did you feel that you were looked down upon, or things like that?
I don't know that I was looked down upon. I mean, that's just normal in society, period. People will do that even today. Yes, I did feel a lot of pressure because there were only 10 of us each year that were chosen for the flight program. So, you know, it'd be like, we were under the microscope. People were still kind of doubting. Women had been in the military aviation for 10 years at that point, but still there was a lot of doubts and society still hadn't accepted it wasn't common, so people were still surprised. It's like, oh, you fly. Some thought I was a stewardess. So anyway, so the thing is I always felt, and all of us women, when we get together, we'd all compare notes, and we all said the same. We had to work twice as hard just to be accepted as even with the guys that were in the squadron. But that's okay. I think we were great officers because we worked really hard. So that was the thing. I never felt intimidated by anybody. I just worked hard, did the best I can, and didn't. It was hard to ask for help because I felt, oh, that was a sign of weakness, and I wasn't going to show any weakness. But like I told my daughter, and it worked for me and it's worked for her, work as hard as you can, do the best you can. Don't throw the, oh, I can't do this because I'm a girl, or I can't do this because of this, or whatever. And people will help you. One story she had is she was going to search, it's called SEER School, it's survival school. And it's a very challenging school. They have some classes and they put you out in the wilderness with a group, and you have to get from one point to another, and then at one point you're captured and simulate, you are in enemy territory, and it simulates you being captured by the enemy, and you're put into a simulated POW camp, and you've got 2-3 days. They put you through different challenges and simulated tortures and stuff, just because they want you to be exposed to it. So if you're ever exposed to it in the real life, it's not a surprise and you can understand how to react to it. But she's 5'8", maybe 110 pounds, real trim, strong, but she's not strong like one of you guys, playing football or whatever. But she had to carry her gear, and it was like 30-40 pounds, and she was trying to climb up a hill. It was kind of muddy and all that, and she was just working hard, and all of a sudden she was just getting weak, and all of a sudden she felt somebody grab her pack, pull it off her back, and then grab her and pull her up the hill. And it was one of these guys who was in the Marines. He was a special forces guy going through the training. She she said thank you, but she never complained, she never cried, she never was going, oh, I can't do this, whatever. And he saw she was struggling, and that's where the teamwork comes in. And that's what I loved about the military, is that you were a team. And he grabbed it and he said, your pack's packed, incorrectly or whatever, and helped her, and then they went on. So I think that's kind of the secret. That's what I saw.
What's some advice you would give if any of these students had ideas of not just becoming a pilot, but joining the military? What kind of advice would you give them?
Don't do drugs. Study hard. Get used to studying and working hard. Make that your personality, that when you do a job, an assignment or whatever, that you do the best you can. Don't just say, oh, it's good enough. Make sure it's never good enough. And you make that a lifestyle and just your way of working on things, that will make it real successful. And also, if that's your dream or you think you want that, pursue it and do it the best you can. And if at some point you realize, no, this just isn't for me, that's okay. But try it. Like I said, do well in school, work hard. Military likes well-rounded individuals, both young women and young men. Be athletic in something. You don't have to be on a varsity team. You can play tennis or whatever. Seek out leadership roles. With the military, you go in, yes, you have leaders, but you're expected to be able to lead others as well. So that critical thinking is really good. Being able to look at something and say, well, this would be done better, or why is it done that? Be able to make a plan and stick with it. So set goals and work hard at it.
I think when we say Navy Commander, often people don't know what that means. Is there another title from one of the other service branches that might be more familiar with what kind of level that would mean?
Yeah, our Navy and Coast Guard, we're kind of unique in the names that we assign our ranks, but it's equivalent to a lieutenant colonel in the Army or Air Force. So it's a fairly senior, it's considered a senior officer, where the next would be equivalent, the next level up would have been equivalent to a colonel in the Air Force or Army. We would call it a captain. And then you start getting into the flag rank, where the men and women are wearing stars, because then there's the generals or whatever. So, it's fairly senior.
So we're kind of to the Q&A portion, but before we bring up your photos, I wanted to ask you one question about that. These guys are in 7th grade, so if they're thinking about the military, it's probably just something that's coming to their mind, in the last few years. What are some of the pros and cons or benefits of being in the military? And not just being in the military, but making a career of it. There are levels to the benefits that you achieve.
Yeah, no, so there's the pros and cons in anything you do. For me, the pros for the military, and this can be associated with just enlisted if you wanted to go into the military right out of high school, or even an officer. It's challenging. You'd have a very challenging job. It would be unique. It wouldn't be the same thing every single day. So if you like variety, you do get travel. If you like to work hard, it's there. Camaraderie, which is really great. Meeting and associating and working with people that have the same ideals and goals as you. The pay is good. You've got a steady job. You don't have to worry about a business going out, bankrupt or whatever, and then all of a sudden you don't have a job. You got that. It comes with medical benefits, retirement options, a really good support system. So there's a lot of community and family associated with that. The cons, yes, you get a lot of travel, but you're away from a family a lot. Navy, you go on deployments. My daughter, you'll see a picture of her. She's on deployment right now with the USS Eisenhower. She's flying helicopters on there. March 14th will be 5 months that she's been out, and we don't expect her home until May or June. So, and they haven't had any port calls because of all the stuff going on. So, she's on this big aircraft carrier, probably about 7-8 months. So that's challenging. You move a lot. If that's something you don't mind doing, then that's great. Some people don't like it. Moving every 2-3 years, I always found it exciting because we found a new place, we'd explore it, enjoy it, and realize if you didn't like it, well, you'd be moving in a couple of years anyway, so you get to see a lot of the world.
Where were some of the places you were deployed?
Bahrain, and then I was, that was just right after the combat exclusion law was lifted. So I was over there for 6 months, and then I came back. I was assigned to a Norfolk, Virginia squadron, and then was deployed over there. And I was in charge of 2 helicopters and the crews to go with it, and we flew all over and serviced all the ships that came into the Arabian Gulf as part of their deployment. The other one is Hawaii. So it was California, Hawaii, Florida, and Maryland was up at the Naval Academy. That was really fun. And then the last 10 years of my career were in Norfolk, Virginia, and then I deployed out of there. And the only other deployment I did was on a ship, and we were out for 9 months. It was right during the last war, the Gulf War, and stuff like that. So it's interesting.
Okay. All right, well, I'm going to pull up some pictures from her time in the Navy and her daughter's time as well, and we'll take a look at those.
So I've lived here for 18 years. I have 3 children. My oldest one had graduated from high school in Virginia, so she went to ETSU. And then my other 2, Sarah and Cody, they went through Sevierville middle school, intermediate middle school, and high school, and graduated. Okay, so that's me. That's the helicopter I flew. It's called H-3 Sea King. They don't fly them in the Navy anymore. It was heavy lift. One mission was anti-submarine warfare. They would go hunt subs. That's not what I did, but it was like a big old pickup truck. We could carry just about anything. So this picture in the lower left is my initial training in the Navy. Everybody in the Navy starts in a fixed wing aircraft, and then we graduate, and I don't have a picture of the helicopter, but it looks a lot like the light flight helicopters that fly around, small, and learned to fly helicopters there. And then I went to the H-3. This is me landing on the ship that was at an air show. That was in Bahrain. And then this picture was when I was on the ship that I deployed on, and we were going through the Suez Canal. Oh, I have to show up Blue Angels because I'm Navy. And last year was 50th anniversary of women in military aviation, naval aviation. And we had our first Blue Angel demonstration pilot. She's the first one to be flying in the formation. They have had another female there who flew Fat Albert and all that. So we were all celebrating her. Amanda Lee, she's awesome, former F-18 pilot anyway, and then so she's with the Blue Angels.
When you guys were younger, the Blue Angels flew over in Alcoa, Maryville. There was a big air show, and the Blue Angels were there. Some of you may have gotten to go over and see it. I was there. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, they'll probably come back in another year or so. It seems like we do every couple of years. Okay, so this is Sarah. So I got to see what we got. So that's her in the helicopter. This is the helicopter that I trained in, and she as well. And this is what she flies now. And her initial flight her pilot, or the plane that she flew in initially, is much faster than the one I did, but that was her after she soloed. And there she is with some night vision goggles, because I didn't have those when I was flying, but now they do. But yeah, so she's now flying this. And like I said, she's on the Eisenhower and doing well. She went to officer candidate school. She finished college and then went to officer candidate school. It's a 3-month program. Came out, went down to Pensacola for flight school. And then, so she got her wings and completed flight training, got her wings, as we call it, in 2020. And so she's been in the Navy for about 6, going on 7 years, but flying constantly for the last 4 years. So she's doing well. And this is my son, Cody. Next to him, he's now a Marine Corps officer. He went to officer candidate school, and he's in flight school right now too. These are just pictures of him with after his Marine Corps training. Marines, you can get into the Marines by enlisting, or in the officer program, you can do it through ROTC. The military academy or officer candidate school. He went to officer candidate school. It was so about like a 3-month program, and then after that they go, all Marine officers go to what they call the basic school, and it's basic infantry training, because the Marines believe that you're a Marine first and then you're a pilot second. So that was about 6 months, and that's when he graduated from that. And then he's down in flight school, picture with Amanda Lee, and then he just finished primary flight training in that plane that Sarah was next to. I told you it was faster and neater. And now he's going to go down to Georgia and learn to fly jets. So he's really excited about that.
So he's going to be doing jets.
He's going to be flying the F-35. So if you guys can Google F-35, you can see what that is and all that. So he's getting ready to go down to Texas in another month, and he'll start that training. And next year, should get his wings, and then he'll be out in the fleet.
So were you, did you receive like pilot licensure? Could you fly a small plane?
I did, yeah. When you finish your primary flight training or actually get your wings, you can go to the FAA, and your training is equivalent to a commercial flight rating. So when I finished my flight training, I went and got my commercial license in airplanes and helicopters and both instruments and all that. So yeah, I was licensed to fly that.
Did you ever fly after the military?
No, I didn't.
Just, had you gotten over that desire?
Well, I mean, I would have loved to, but it'd been a while since I had flown in the military, and I was more comfortable in helicopters. It was expensive to do that, and then I had 2 small kids at home, and so I've kind of ventured off in a different way. Okay, so these are just pictures. Obviously, I'm showcasing women in the military aviation. Women and guys, you can fly anything in the military. Ladies, we got helicopters. You've got a jet. Maddie Swagel is flying jets. You've got Coast Guard. We've got Air Force. You got the tilt rotor. You got F-18s, and C-5 Galaxies. I mean, the sky's the limit if you don't mind the the cliche. But yes, it's there if you want it, and don't think you can't. That's my Sarah when she was soloing in her T6 as the primary flight training. So, Sarah, oh, there she is. You can do it.
All right.
Okay.
Questions, guys?
Okay, you can.
Okay, if you can go back to the Blue Angels.
Sure.
Real quick.
Can you go back?
Go back.
Picture of the Blue
Go back to the picture. There. Oh,
Okay,
there.
that big plane, is that an AC-130?
It's a C-130. AC is a modification of it. Obviously, they're not going to be doing the guns things at the air show, but it is a C-130, and they call it Fat Albert.
Will you go down a couple inches?
What are you looking for?
I forgot which one it was. Wait, go up one. Is that a Black Hawk?
It's equivalent. It's the Navy's version of the Black Hawk. Yeah, we call it the Seahawk, but it's essentially the same thing. Several years ago, the military tried to just get one type of helicopter to make it cheaper, and you figure the parts, they can do that and everything. So that's what they call the Seahawk, and that's a Sierra version. It doesn't do submarine tracking or anything like that. It's again kind of all that. I'm gonna go to him and I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Whenever you were in Texas, did you go up about Fort Hood?
No, I was really young when we were stationed in Texas. We were down by San Antonio. I don't know if that's near Fort Hood. I don't remember. I was like,
Fort Hood's kind of in the upper middle part.
yeah, we were further south because we weren't too far from the border. I know we used to go down to Mexico, but I was in, first, second, and third grade, so it was not too many. That's been a long time ago, sweetie.
That was when she was a child.
A child younger than you.
Campbell?
What corps would you say would be the best to fly bigger ships like tankers and gunships?
I don't know. I mean, I had the attitude, okay, so I'll tell you a story. When I got selected for helicopters, I cried. I wanted C-130s. I thought, no, I want C-130s. And I was driving home to tell my husband I was crying. But once I got into the helicopter training, I loved it. If I had to go back to do it again, I wouldn't be crying. I'd be putting helicopters as my first choice because I loved them. You know, I can't say one's better than the other. It all depends on what you like. Do you like to fly with others in a crew type thing? Do you like the mission? Kind of what I was telling my son when he was deliberating on what he should put down on his request sheet, or dream sheet as they call it. I said, consider the mission, where it's located, and what you think you would really enjoy. Would you like to fly with a crew, or would you want to fly solo? Do you like to do aerobatics, or do you not like it? So it all depends, hon. The thing is most likely you're going to love whatever you fly.
Have you ever flew at F-16?
No, I was helicopters. I got to have blades on top. Anybody? Ladies,
Anybody
you got
else?
any questions?
Anybody else?
Yes.
What was your most dangerous mission?
Oh, okay, thank you for bringing that back up. Oh, gosh. I don't know, I mean, I was never really put into a situation where it was dangerous. The one that was probably more dangerous than any other missions I fly was when we were landing on the ships at night, especially because the ocean gets really dark, and to go from a bright, you guys have done that, where, at night in the house, if you go from the bathroom where you have the lights off and then you turn it off and then you walk into the dark, you can't see anything for a second. That's kind of what it's like to fly at night, and so that can be kind of daunting. But
What's it like landing on ships with them moving with the ocean? That has to be.
it's interesting, yeah, or because a lot of times you don't. Sometimes if you have a horizon to focus on, it's not too bad. But if you don't have something to relate to, like with a helicopter, you can't tell if you're moving and all that. That's where your crewman comes in. It's challenging, and you tend to sweat a lot, and you tend to squeeze the controls, and you have to start breathing, and because if you don't hit it right, you have nowhere else to go, and you don't want to crash it. So.
Last question, Kate.
Have you ever almost crashed a helicopter?
No, I haven't. No, no, I'm not going. No, fortunately, no, I didn't. I did have one engine failure, but I happened to be right. It just taken off. I was in Hawaii, so we were over land, and in the procedure, you would come up to like a 15-foot hover and stop and check and make sure all the gauges and everything's working well and they're where they're supposed to be, and everything looked good, and then you pull power and tip the nose forward, because with a helicopter, your wing is on top, so that's where your power and lift comes from. So to go forward and up, you kind of have to lean forward and up, because it's kind of like, okay, I need to go this way. And as soon as we did that, one of the engine failed. And I mean, it was so quick. My co-pilot put the power selectors up to full, and I made the smoothest and softest landing I ever made. My crewman goes, "What just happened? Why are we on the ground?" And that was it. It was enough that when I got out, I was kind of like, my knees were kind of shaking, and I'm like, okay, that was exhilarating. They kind of got the adrenaline, and then we hopped in another helicopter and went and did our thing.
Something I think is interesting, and you can speak to this, I may be completely off, but when you're piloting a helicopter, there are a few risks that someone flying a jet might not have to deal with. Like, if you lose your engines,
We don't glide.
You don't glide.
We don't glide, no.
There's no, I guess you could try an emergency landing, but it's not going to
Well, okay, so in the helicopter that I flew, as opposed to hers, it had looked like a boat on the bottom, called a boat hull. And so you could actually land on the water and taxi around and float. And if it did turn upside down, which most helicopters tend to do, because we've got this heavy gearbox and blades over there, so we're top heavy, you get on the water, it's going to turn upside down. We would float, because we had those, I don't know if you can bring the picture up, but we had those big wheel wells, the sponsons on the side. Okay, so these things kind of acted like floats, so if we turned upside down, we floated.
What do you say?